Hi, everybody, and welcome to, well, the first of many, we hope, of, what should we call this? We could call this Davy Jones's Locker Room. I thought it might be an original title, where we're joined here by special guests that have got strong Sunderland links, and there aren't many stronger than our first guest. I'm delighted to welcome Micky Gray. Hiya, Micky, how are you getting on?
Dave, I'm very well, thank you very much. Closed behind these four walls, but like us all, we're all trying to get through it the best we possibly can. But yeah, I'm feeling good.
Good man. And you know, rather than sort of dwell on how miserable everyone's situation is right now, and I know a lot of people's is darker than many, why don't we talk about some football from bygone years? So let's kick off, Micky. This is how it's going to run a little bit. I want to sort of get into your career and talk about some of the highs, some of the lows, but from a Sunderland perspective. So, you know, just having a bit of research on you, and of course, a lot of people will know this about you. You almost started off as a Manchester United player rather than a Sunderland player. But did you actually grow up as a Sunderland fan yourself?
I was a bit of a mix, if I'm brutally honest with you, Dave. I mean, I know people say that you should only have one club, but if I'm completely honest with you, I think on my bedroom wall it was always Manchester United pictures. You know, Brian Robson, Jesper Olsen, Mark Hughes. They were my heroes when I was growing up. But I think it's in your DNA, isn't it? I think all my family was Sunderland supporters. My nana lived round the corner from Roker Park, so we always used to go to her house on weekends when Sunderland were playing at home. Always used to go in the full well end. And when I initially started going into the ground, it was for the final 15 minutes. I mean, I couldn't get any tickets. We couldn't afford tickets. And they used to open the big gates at the back of the stand. And we always used to run in, me, my brother and my uncle, we used to run in for the last 15 minutes. And it was the days of Gabby Deeney, Gates, Clive Walker, Sean Elliott. That was my first memories of going into a stand, which was the full well end, and literally watching the last 15 minutes of games until I was obviously able to go and watch the full 90 minutes and able to go and pay and get a ticket. And I'll never forget those memories. You know, it was just the sense of it, the smell of even just walking around the stadium and getting outside the ground and then walking in. It was just an incredible feeling. So from that moment, I think you kind of turn towards being a Sunderland supporter. And once, like I say, you know, once it's in your blood and you're from that area, it's just special times and it stays with you for your life.
So, I mean, it's funny, Micky, because I've heard a few people tell that story about the gates opening and then sort of jumping in for the last 15 minutes. There must have been like a queue of you out there.
Yeah, I think there probably was actually. Yeah, and you just try and fight to get to the front. But it was brilliant because, you know, you had the banter of the full well end chanting to the Roker end, and it was back and forth throughout the game, and obviously watching the game in between, which was pretty special, you know. But yeah, they used to open the gates, so if people wanted to leave early, that's the way. They used to obviously walk down the streets around Roker area. And that was me and my brother, and obviously a few of the family as well used to stand outside. But I would probably say there was definitely over a couple of hundred people every single time that we did it. So they all had the same idea as me, I think.
Yeah, brilliant times, brilliant memories. So you had your little dalliance with Manchester United as a schoolboy, and then I think came back to Sunderland, didn't you? So at what age were you when you signed your professional contracts? I think your debut for the first team was 92?
92, yeah. That was, well, we played Derby County away, which was my first game at the baseball ground. I came on at half-time. Never been so nervous in my life. You always think you're prepared for it, but you're really not. So I came on at half-time. I don't remember who I came on for. It might have been Kevin Ball, actually. And we won that game 1-0. And then I think it was the week after that, we travelled to Southend, and I came on again at half-time. I think it was Martin Scott or Gareth Hall. I think they were playing. One of them two came off, and I came on at half-time. We won that game 1-0. And it's really bizarre, but I was on 36 quid a week at the time. And then a couple of weeks after that, I got an envelope. And when I looked at it, it just looked a bit bulkier than normal when we used to get paid at the end of every single week. So I've opened it up, and obviously there's a few more quid in than there was 36 quid. And I thought, you know, being a local lad, not had much money, and I thought, do I tell somebody that there's more money in this or not? So I didn't. I kept my mouth shut, and then I pulled one of the experienced players, and I just went, look, I said, like, I've just had an envelope with my wages in, and I said, like, there's a lot more in that I'm supposed to get. And they turned around and said, no, that's your win bonuses. So from that moment, I was quite happy, but you know, it was pretty special. But the home debut was the one against Barnsley. I mean, building up to, I think I knew about 48 hours before the game was being played. Came on at left wing. I started the game at left wing, and I scored after a minute with my right foot, believe it or not. And don't ask me about the rest of the game, Dave, because I have not got a clue. I was just oblivious. I mean, all I could think about was getting on the pitch, which was just a dream come true, to be honest with you. But to get a goal after a minute, I mean, to settle the nerves or whatever else I was thinking at the time, it was just a brilliant feeling.
So that was that be 93 then? Was that Malcolm Crosby or was that Terry Butcher?
That was Malcolm Crosby, yeah. Malcolm gave me my debut. So it was the year after they got to the cup final, which we lost against Liverpool. And then I don't remember how far we were into the season, but I knew I was close because I was starting to train with the first team on a regular basis, and I knew I wasn't being left behind, if you know what I mean. I wasn't like they were the experienced players. I was fitting in, and I knew I was doing really well in training. And they kept pulling me to the side and saying, "Are you ready? Are you ready?" That was for a few weeks, and I travelled to a couple of the games. I think it was Bristol City and Bristol Rovers. We played them back to back. And I was on the coach, and I'd never done that before. So I thought to myself, I'm close. And you kind of start to prepare yourself, but there's no preparing you until you get onto that pitch. It's just it's an incredible feeling. I suppose you can't compare it to anything. You know, reserve games, training with the first team. There's just nothing like playing in front of a crowd. It was a special moment.
What we would have all given, Micky, to have had that one moment that you've had. And of course, you went on to have a lot more of those moments, which we'll come on to. But so having had that big moment and scoring the goal and all that, I guess you might have expected to be playing every week and nailing down a place. Didn't really happen like that for you, did it?
No, it didn't actually. And it's difficult actually, because when you're a young lad and you get your opportunity, you think, right, this is it. I've made it. I'm now in the first team. Now I've got to try and establish myself. But you're kind of in and out of the team, and we changed managers. Obviously, Terry Butcher, who you just mentioned before, he came in, and his number 2, Bobby Ferguson, he didn't really see eye to eye with me. I think he used to call me Coco. Make your own mind up why. I don't know.
Because you could juggle.
He was a bit of a strange character, but I knew he had good intentions for me. And then again, after that, it was Mick Buxton, who, again, he was probably the manager throughout all my career. We just never seen eye to eye, and he didn't like my personality, he didn't like my lifestyle. Tried to sell me a couple of times, and I just went no. And me being a cheeky little chappy like I was when I was, 18 or 19, he just said to me, right, you're leaving the club. I said, no, I'm not. And I said, I'm going to be staying here longer than you are. And I think from that moment, he never played me for about another 5 or 6 games, and he lost his job. And then the rest was history. I mean, I started playing every single week after that. And I mean, you'll probably get onto it, but obviously the best times in my career at Sunderland was obviously under Peter Reid.
So what was special about Reedy? And was it a sort of love at first sight between the two of you?
Yeah, I think so. He came in, and what happens is when new managers come into a club, they obviously get everybody in a room, and they'll have a chat with everybody and tell you what direction they want the club to go in. But he couldn't really say much because I think we had 7 or 8 games to go, and we were really fighting relegation when the gaffer came in. So a few expletives, as you could obviously understand, with somebody like Peter Reid in charge. And after he gave us this pep talk, he just instilled, I don't know what it was just mass amount of confidence in everybody. And we went into those games, and he just had us like running through brick walls. And from that moment, even from that first meeting, I just thought, I love this guy. He knows what it's all about. He's full of passion. He obviously earns respect as soon as he walks into a dressing room when you think about the career that he had. And he got the Sunderland people. He kind of got what it was all about. You know, it wasn't just about us as players and in that dressing room. He kind of grasped the whole city, if you like. And I think that's why all Sunderland supporters absolutely fell in love with him. He was a passionate guy, and I think that instilled into the players. And I mean, we just went from strength to strength. He was just incredible as a guy.
I'd agree with that, Micky. I think he totally got the area and got the city. And there aren't many people that do that and win the respect back from the Sunderland people as well. I think you can probably count them on one hand since the war, I'd say, in terms of Sunderland managers. But you talk about the confidence you gave you. Obviously, we did stay up by the skin of our teeth, and then the next season, do you think it was about the momentum that had been built up from the back end of that season that just propelled you onwards?
Well, I mean, if you talk about additions, there wasn't too many additions the following season. So to go from relegation to, promotion was just, I mean, we didn't really know where it was coming from. But I think everybody will probably tell you this who's played the game. It's like you get on this wave, and if you keep winning every single week, the confidence that flies through the players, you can't wait for the next game to come around. And that's how we felt. And I think, it obviously has to come down to a lot from Peter Reid. I mean, his coaching staff, we had Bobby Saxton, who was there with Peter Reid. And Sacco was, I mean, you ask any of the players who worked under him, he was brilliant. He was just old school. It was all on a piece of paper, all his team talks, etc. But training was proper old school. But we all loved it. We had a brilliant dressing room. The experienced lads in there were great with the younger lads. And when you keep on winning, it's just special times. And that was the way it was.
Who were the important players, Mickey, in that dressing room then that you talk about? Those
I think Quinny's always the one I think that springs to mind. But for me, I think it had to be Kevin Ball. You talk about captains who you've played under, and I've played under some pretty good captains, but I'll never forget working under somebody like Kevin Ball. He was brilliant with me, even when I was a young lad, before I got into the first team. He learned me to respect the players who were in the dressing room. He learned me to train well every single day. And believe it or not, he learned me how to live my life properly. I know on some occasions I probably didn't do that. In those days you could actually go out and enjoy yourself on a Saturday night. But you ask any of the players who I played alongside, I came into training on Monday to Friday, and I was always front of running. I always worked hard. I always reached my targets. So I think a lot has to go down to somebody like Ball. He was just an incredible captain. I mean, when we used to walk out the door, even at Roker Park, we used to have this thing where he used to bang on the door before we walked down the tunnel. I felt sorry for that door every single Saturday. I mean, he nearly broke it down every single time he banged on it. That was just him. He was a passionate guy, and he wore his heart on his sleeve, and he rubbed off on everybody. And I think if you couldn't learn from somebody like him, then you were in trouble.
Do you think, though, in some ways, promotion came a bit too soon for that team?
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly did. But who's to say that, when you get yourself in a position, you're not going to go onto a football field and think to yourself, right, we need to lose our last 4 games, or we're going to actually get promoted, and we're not good enough to get promoted. You just never know when that time's right. As many clubs have found out, and we probably did that season. And I think it was Wimbledon the season after, I think, where we played.
The last game, yeah.
Yeah, the last game. And I think we still had a fighting chance.
Yeah.
I think it was Coventry who kicked off 15 minutes later than us, didn't they?
That's right.
And at the end of that game, I've had some bad feelings in my time, but that was certainly up there. That was in the top 5. It was awful. It was like a deadly silence on the ground itself, and then walking down the tunnel and back into the dressing room and waiting for those 15 minutes. There was a little room actually next to one of the dressing rooms, and there was a few lads inside the room, there were a few lads outside, and we were waiting for the Coventry result, and that came through, and then we kind of knew that the writing was on the wall, that we were getting relegated. And it wasn't a nice feeling at all. I mean, the dressing room itself was silent for 10 or 15 minutes until obviously the gaffer came in and gave us a bit of a pep talk. And then you think about the journey home from London. It just wasn't nice at all, and something that you never wanted to go through again. But, it's a long career, and some people had to do it again.
Yeah, and I suppose to compound the agony at that time, there was on the horizon this incredible stadium that was going up, and you knew that there was a chance of playing Premier League football in the first season at the Stadium of Light, which had slipped through your hands. So that must have made things even more difficult.
You're talking about the playoff?
No, the stadium, the new stadium, the Stadium of Light, which was being built, of course. The first season was then destined to be in the Championship.
Absolutely, yeah, and that was one of the targets. Obviously, I mean, Bob Murray, who was obviously the chairman at the time, I mean, he obviously wanted us to try and get promoted and moving into that new stadium, which all of the players had been shown round a dozen times. We kept going every single time. There was something new, and we knew when it was going to be ready. And we all wanted to play Premier League football in that season. unfortunately, it didn't happen that way. In hindsight, was it a good thing or a bad thing? Well, I don't really know the answers to that, to be honest with you. But we needed to move. I know people have got special memories from Roker Park, and I'm one of them, and you're one of them also. But football was moving forward. We'd seen new stadiums obviously being built, and when we got in there, and you just walked out for the first time, Dave, it was mind blowing. It really was mind blowing. I mean, you see, you're playing in front of 20,000 odd at Roker Park, and then you're walking into this stadium, this brand new stadium, which was so special, and it needed Premier League football, not Championship football, and we wanted to get there as much as everybody did in the city.
To say, I went to the last game at Roker Park, which was Everton. I remember the emotion of that occasion, how sad that felt. But we always parked our family near Monkwearmouth, so next to the stadium, you saw it sort of going up. And then I was at the City game, which was the first home game, and I remember feeling as a fan, you're talking about what it was like to step out as a player, but that feeling of a fan was one of pride, that wow, our football club has this incredible new home. And then to top it off with a good performance that night and a victory, I think we were all really excited about the future. But in terms of the personnel, hadn't changed massively over that course of that couple of seasons, but there were just one or two astute additions, like you say, like Quinny at the top of the pitch. You have a new goalkeeper and a little centre forward who hit the ground running, didn't he?
Yeah. I always remember, and this is what Sunderland was like. We didn't have stars. Niall Quinn was obviously the biggest name that we had in the dressing room. We kind of followed Niall's career because he'd been very successful at the clubs that he'd been at before he came to Sunderland. So when Kevin walked through the door, we didn't know what to expect from him. And I remember the first day in training, there's always banter going on every single day, and everybody had said the hellos to him, etc. And you want him to be a success. And we had this shooting competition at the end of training, as a lot of clubs do. And I remember, maybe it was me or one of the other lads just said, there's big expectation on you to hit the back of the net. You know that, don't you? And he said, well, just watch this. And I've never seen anything like it. And I think until this day, I've retired now nearly 10 years. The finishing was just incredible. And I was like, well, I hope you can do that on match day. And boy, did he prove everybody wrong, didn't he? He was just sensational as a player. And what a partnership. I have to say, Kevin, as good as he was, I think having that partnership with Niall and the experience and just that big man, little man that people have talked about for many, many years, the way they just connected, it wasn't something that he worked on in training or anything like that. It was just an automatic click. And it worked. Oh my God. He was just an incredible player, Kevin. And some of the goals that you see him score, you forget about half of them. The angles that he used to put them in, and how he used to be so brave to get on the end of things, whether it was inside the area or outside the 18-yard box. But he wasn't just a finisher. He was a complete player. He was absolutely brilliant for us. And not just on the pitch. He was a great lad as well. He was part of the banter in the dressing room, and he got himself involved in everything that we all did. We used to do that a lot. Everybody, the camaraderie was fantastic in the dressing room. And if you weren't ready for a laugh and a joke and a bit of banter in that dressing room, then you soon got found out, let me tell you.
It wasn't just that partnership at the top of the pitch, though, Micky. You had a partnership of your own on that left flank with Alan Johnson, which was just sort of coming to fruition. Tell us what it was like to play behind him.
Well, again, it was, people think that we worked on that in training. We were just in sync with each other. We kind of knew each other's game inside out. And that's one of my big regrets, actually, at Sunderland, Dave, if I'm completely honest with you, that Alan didn't stay and play in the Premier League. Yeah. Because he was such a talented player at the time. I'd known Alan from my Man United days. He was there as a youngster. I think he signed for Man United when he was about 11 or 12 years old. So it was brilliant to see him when he signed for Sunderland. And we just had this connection. And then every single week, he knew what I was going to do. Obviously, I loved overlapping. And when Alan had the ball and I knew he was in a 1v1 situation, I knew what was coming. It was a step over, chop it onto his right foot, putting the ball into the area. He was either setting somebody up or he was scoring goals. So, yeah, that was a bit of a regret of mine that Alan didn't stay. And and try it out in the Premier League. But what a talent. And then, you know, you jump across to the right-hand side. We had a competition, so it was me and Alan Johnson and Nick Summerby and Chris Macon. And we had a competition of assists and goals from the start of the season to the end of the season. So there wasn't just us playing against the opposition. We were playing against ourselves in one way. And that was what it was all about. It was just brilliant, you know, the laughs and the jokes, but the serious side of it, when we got on the football field, everybody was in the same corner fighting for each other.
Who won the competitions? I can't remember.
Oh, the left-hand side, always, Dave.
Yeah.
Somebody and Macon will probably tell you it was them two, but absolutely no chance. I mean, Nick's right foot, to be honest with you. I mean, I've never seen anybody apart from Beckham cross the ball like him. I mean, if you want to talk about now, you're probably looking at somebody like Trent Alexander-Arnold with the assists, but Nicky just, you know, he wasn't the quickest. He wasn't the most energetic. He'd stand on the byline. We used to call them the option at certain points because, you know, like there was 10 of us running around and he used to stand on the byline on the right-hand side. But we forgive him that because, I mean, his right foot and what he used to achieve and the assists was just absolutely incredible. And I think, you know, for Kevin and Niall, he was an absolute dream.
2 brilliant seasons then in the Championship. The first one obviously ended in the playoff final. I was reading something earlier after the penalty situation that the manager had got you to come to his house for a couple of days. Is that right?
Yeah, he did. The gaffer, well, I'd say Reedy to you, but yeah, the gaffer to me. Yeah, he gave me a call and I was in the house and he basically just went, he said, "How you doing?" And I went, I said, "Well, you can imagine, really." I said, I've not come out the front door. I said, like, you know, there's media people standing outside the garden or they're knocking on the door wanting an interview. And I just didn't want to speak to anybody. But obviously I was going to take his call and he said, "Look, why didn't you come around mine for a couple of days?" Well, as soon as he said that, I knew exactly what was coming. So I put a couple of bottles of wine in my car and I went round to his house and stayed at his house for a couple of days. And that was what it was all about. You know, it wasn't just the players. He was part of us. There's not many managers would have done that, to be honest with you. But he was just brilliant with me and everybody at the Gaffers. So, yeah, he was fantastic. And I remember when I left his house, he said to me, he said, "Right, now go and get yourself on holiday and give yourself a 7-day break." So a few of the lads at the time, Martin Smith was one of them, Stephen Brodie and a couple of the other lads, I think we went across to Cyprus and had a week's holiday out there. And that was it. Well, there's a bizarre story about that. The first day I got there, we walked into this square. I don't know if you've ever been, but I'm sure people will know what I'm talking about. And the first pub that we went into, the first person I bumped into and his wife was Clive Mendonca.
Oh, no.
That is the gospel truth. I'm not lying about that. So I just walked up to him and I shook his hand and I think he bought me a beer. It wasn't the other way around.
I did hope so.
And he just went, "No hard feelings." And I said, "Look, you did what you had to do." And that was it.
Oh, man. So you obviously had the celebrations, but it must have felt like the end of the world. How long did it take you to get it out of your system? Did it take playing again and winning matches again to actually get it out of your system?
Yeah, probably. I do remember, you know, you get your day to go back to pre-season, which is around about July the 1st or something like that. And I remember I went back into training about 2 or 3 weeks earlier than everybody else just to get a head start. Because I was so determined that we weren't actually going to finish in the playoffs. We were going to get promotion or finish first or second. So I got myself ready. I was prepared. And then when everybody came back for pre-season, that's when you start to forget about it. Obviously, the laugh and joke in the dressing rooms, etc. And you don't mind that. It takes it out the top of your head, if you're brutally honest with you. But yeah, that first game's the one. Getting back onto the pitch, not knowing what reception you're going to get from supporters. That was always in the back of my mind. But that season, it was just incredible. The way we started. I mean, I think we lost 3 games the whole season. And one of them was against Barnsley. And I didn't play in that game, but we went down to 10 men. Or they went down to 10 men. And they actually beat us 2-1, which is a big surprise. But what a season. A season I'll never forget.
Amazing. And it was a brilliant season for fans. My favourite season, probably. And the two that, well, the year before and the 2 that followed it. Let's fast forward then. So we tear through the Championship in that second time and then straight into the Premier League. And, you know, it was really interesting, Micky, just reading through the stats as I was doing earlier on today, just to remind myself of how incredible the start that Sunderland had to that season. So after 10 games, second place. And at Christmas time, famously, third place and with a chance to kick on. And of course, that didn't happen. But give us an idea of what it was like being part of that team at that time. Because remember, this is a team that's been fighting to survive in the Premier League in previous incarnations and sort of jumping between the two leagues. And then suddenly you're taking on everybody and beating them.
Yeah, it was momentum, Dave. I think that's basically what it was, and us believing how good we were. Because of the season before and how every single week, we were just performing. It was the energy levels and the confidence, and we had the support on side, and I think that was absolutely massive for us. And let's not forget, I think that was our first game was against Chelsea, and we got a thumping 4-0.
I was there.
And I remember looking around at the rest of the players on that day. I think there was a couple of young lads playing. Chris Lumsden, I think, played, and Paul Thirlwell played. Not regulars in the first team, but went on to have decent careers themselves. And we were looking at each other and thinking, if this is what it's going to be like every week, then we've got to change something. So it was kind of a drop down to earth, if you like. And I think a couple of games after that, I think we drew one. But the game that I remember, and I mean the Sunderland supporters will obviously love this, but was the Newcastle game. That felt like the first game of the season for us. You want to play against your biggest rivals. Your form's not fantastic, but you want to play against your big rivals. A derby game where they always say form goes out the window. And that was a game, I think we just went into that thinking, this is it. If we win this game, it'll spur us on throughout the whole of the season. And I think it did. That win that we got against Newcastle and obviously playing at St James's Park and coming away from there just instilled this belief in us that we still are a good team. You're looking around the dressing room and you're looking at the teammates alongside you. And again, many managers will tell you this. They'll always say this in team talks. Look to your left and look to your right. Believe in the players in your dressing room. And that's exactly what we did. And I think that was the moment where we thought we can do really well in this Premier League.
It was a magical night, and for Sunderland fans, really, that whole season was magical. Okay, we had a bad run after Christmas, Mickey, but still finishing seventh was probably beyond most people's expectations when we went back into the Premier League and then repeated the trick. Were there any regrets that we weren't able to kick on in those both seasons, really, after Christmas into the new year when we went on sort of bad runs of form?
Well, I think obviously the huge regret's not getting into Europe because we had a chance in both those seasons. That was a huge regret, and I think the point where we started to lose games, Dave, was probably when we started talking about Europe. Not many of our lads, if any, had actually played European football. So to be talking about that within your first season or your second season of being back in the Premier League, it was probably the wrong thing to do. And it wasn't so much the manager or the coaching staff. I think it was us as players and maybe watching TV too much or picking up a newspaper and reading about it, where we should have just concentrated on who we had in front of us, who we needed to beat. I mean, that first season when we played Man United at Stadium of Light, we could have went top. And I got sent off. Alex Ray got sent off and Roy Keane got sent off. Graham... what was I can't remember what he was called now. The referee, I'll remember his name in a minute. But I went up to him and I thought their goal should have been called offside. I think Alex Ray had a fight with Roy Keane on the pitch. And it was from then, the turn of the year, when we got into the new year, things started to go wrong. And you're right, the season after that was pretty much the same as well. And I think the thing that we probably did wrong that season, we all looked at the fixture lists, and I think everybody was basically just looking for the Newcastle game. And I know we won it at St James's Park again, but there was more games that we needed to win. And you always look at the sides in the bottom half of the table who you think you should be fighting against. They were more important to us than the Newcastle game, funny enough. And I don't think the season really went that way, certainly going into the second half of the season.
On a personal note for you, though, Mickey, you obviously got the call up from Kevin Keegan, who was the England manager at the time and played 3 times for your country. Was that the icing on the cake in terms of your career?
Yeah, I think as a young lad, I think that's your dream when when you're kicking a football around in the streets or against your garage. You obviously want to start playing professional football first and foremost, and making your debut for whoever it is a dream come true. To be a local lad and make your debut for Sunderland, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, to be honest with you, certainly in my eyes. But I think the special thing about, making my debut for England and obviously picking up that first cap was we were still playing in the Championship. We'd obviously just got promotion to the Premier League. But it wasn't just me, it was Kevin Phillips who made his debut. He started the game against Hungary. I came on for the last 17 minutes. We had Alan Johnson, who'd made his debut for Scotland. Thomas Sorensen, I think, who'd made his debut for Denmark. There were so many young lads who, basically at the time, were unheard of, who were trying to make a name for themselves. And that's what happened. Yeah, but for me, it's got to be top of the tree. I mean, to pull on that shirt is so special. And I didn't feel out of place. Same thing as, going back to when I was 16, 17 years old and training with the first team at Sunderland. I went to that squad, all these stars who I'd watched on TV every single week. Alan Shearer, Michael Owen, Jamie Redknapp, David Beckham, Paul Scholes, Tony Adams, Sol Campbell. I mean, I can go through all of them, Teddy Sheringham, people like that. I'd watched them on TV, not being anywhere near them. So to walk in that dressing room, I thought, well, the only thing I can do is show them how good I am in training. And then when we get to the match, is show them how good I am again. And that's all I had in my mind. And I loved every single minute of it, Dave. I know it was only 17 minutes. And I remember in the game, I think it was about 2 or 3 minutes before the end of the game, I ran up the left-hand side and I put probably one of the best crosses in my career. And who was on the end of it was Alan Shearer. What did he do? We went and missed it, didn't he? I think he did it on purpose.
Probably.
No, but it was an incredible time.
Yeah. Oh, good for you, Micky. Listen, I'm not going to keep you any longer. I've really loved chatting and going down memory lane. And I think you'll agree with me that the people of Sunderland deserve cheering up in what's a miserable time as well. And I'm sure you'd agree with me as well that the NHS workers of Sunderland deserve special praise too.
Absolutely. I think there was half a dozen of us or 12 of us who'd sent a message to all the NHS and the incredible work that they've been doing. And I hope they just keep up the good work. I'm sure they're going to do that. It's been incredible to see the reaction, the applause the other day was just sensational. And they deserve every bit of respect that's coming their way. They've been sensational. But, I've been brought on here to talk about my career and bring up a few memories, some good ones and some bad ones. Thanks, mate. But it's been nice. Been very nice just to send something back to the Sunderland supporters. So
absolutely, and they'll have something to think about and talk about over the coming days. I think with a positive reflection on Sunderland as well. Micky, I look forward to better times and welcoming you back to the Stadium of Light. You're welcome there anytime, mate.
Thank you, Dave. Take care and good luck to all the Sunderland supporters.
All the best, Micky. Thank you.